special meeting. Call this meeting to order and opening with public comments. Richard, do we have any public comments?
We do not have any public comments, whether live at the meeting or any submitted prior to.
All right, then I will move on to item number 1. Consideration of possible action to accept the downtown design master plan. Richard, would you like to open this item?
Yes, just to start with on this, development of this phase of planning for future development in the downtown area, which is the historic preservation district, what many think of as the downtown area as well, here in Montgomery, has been ongoing since the Corporation and White Up Studio were approved for this work in November 2020. This is specifically an MEDC project. It was budgeted as part of our, now passed recently ended fiscal year. That budget, including the funds within it, were approved by City Council because this particular item was in excess of $10,000. It also was specifically approved at a meeting of the Montgomery City Council in November of 2020. So, City Council has the financial oversight of MEDC, and so I just wanted to note for the record and for everyone here, that while this is an MEDC project and it's up to MEDC ultimately to accept this project before it moves forward in any direction, City Council, has their own involvement with this. And will continue to in the future, as two of you know who are from this body, who are from council, fulfilling both of your joint roles. So.
And Richard, if I can interrupt, we have a full quorum of the MEDC with Arnett easily missing, but we also have a quorum of City Council. Ms. Davis is in the audience.
All right, thank you. And just as that note for the general public, I'll note that a notice was posted by the city that quorum was possible in addition to the MEDC for the special meeting of Montgomery City Council, as well as potentially the Planning and Zoning Commission, which I do not believe we have. A quorum. At least at this time. But just for the record, I'll notice that notice was posted as well in case, I won't interrupt the meeting to announce it, but I will note it for the record. And thank you for letting me know that. So unless there's anything else you wanted to add, then I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to the Building Corporation for the presentation.
Hi, my name is Jim Patterson. I'm a landscape architect with White Oak Studio. We're working with Building Corporation, and I'll be speaking to the bulk of the presentation tonight. And then I believe Lori or Kyle will come up and talk about some of the specific next steps with you all. So we'll go on through. The one question that I had beforehand is, how does this relate to the report that you've already seen? It's the same information. We just knew that we were going to be presenting the slides, and so we reduced some of the words and made them bigger and kind of turned text into bullet points. So if you're more familiar with the original report, you can follow along. The recommendations are all. So the original vision that we worked with you all to develop is to create a downtown that is not only beautiful, but it creates a customer experience throughout the week, 7 days a week, and it enables businesses to thrive. So we're focusing on the customers and on the businesses. And we see that this would be achieved through a three-pronged approach. One is about improving the arrival and parking experience for your residents and your visitors. Second is to provide public streetscape improvements that create this unique, appropriate setting for businesses to attract customers. Again, that two-pronged approach, both businesses and the customers. And then finally, to create a safe, enjoyable pedestrian experience that encourages your visitors to linger and explore downtown. I know you can't quite see everything here, but this is the overall vision, and I'll emphasize that this is a long-term vision. We know from our own experience, as you do probably, that long-term visions are developed or implemented over time, and sometimes things change and bodies make different decisions as they go along. So this is to set the broad vision for the historic downtown. Now I'm going to start, I'm going to go area by area through. We'll start off with Highway 105. And so the overall objectives here are to to better integrate Highway 105 into downtown, to beautify it, and to improve pedestrian safety and walkability. You all are probably aware that TxDOT is considering improvements to 105, and so there will be opportunities, we hope, in the future for you all to dovetail into TxDOT projects that would enable you to piggyback or work within those projects. This is the portion of the plan. You see 105 going across the screen, and then vertically you see 149 and Liberty Street there in their intersection where the big star is there. And so we'll start up at the east end of this area where 105 intersects Prairie Street. It's a funny intersection, and so we're looking at shifting curb lines around slightly to create a standard width intersection that provides cars some stacking room so they can wait there on Prairie and then turn out onto 105. It would also beautify and improve pedestrian safety on each of those two corners there. And so you see a more typical crosswalk and places for people to stand and a way to turn in onto Prairie and then John A. Butler, where you don't kind of take that quick jog at 35 miles an hour hoping to shortcut into downtown. The next topic about 105 is specifically related to TxDOT. They're going to be doing a access management plan for all of 105, which would include this area. And so it's, again, as I said, an opportunity for the city to build upon that project, possibly adding sidewalks for pedestrian safety and convenience, adding street trees, decorative light poles with banners, and then you'll see in this sketch the idea of these flagpoles going down a new grass median that would possibly include large Texas flags to celebrate your heritage with the Texas flag. When we get down to McCowan Street, one of the things that the design team did during our study was to coordinate several times with the TxDOT, local TxDOT engineers to understand their plans and concerns both for 105 and for 149. And so on 105, one of their concerns is a number of intersections right before and right after the major intersection with 149. And so they were particularly looking at McCowan, and we did several studies, but the recommended approach is to close McCowan as it reaches 105, but leave it open for full access to the businesses there and to get into the businesses from both 105 and from McCowan and John A. Butler. It would also have sidewalks and landscape to improve the visibility and the connection with downtown. As I said, we'd retain those business driveways and enhance the parking and landscaping along John A. Butler Street. We believe with this study that the businesses' access to those businesses is actually improved and the aesthetics and appearance will be improved. When we get up to the Liberty Street intersection, this is a perspective sketch in the lower left-hand corner and the plan on the right for possibilities. And these would, of course, need to be coordinated as part of a TxDOT project and meeting their requirements, but it would include both left and right turn lanes, themed pavement, again, using the Lone Star theme of the Texas flag to really celebrate your history, having safe pedestrian spaces at all four sides of that, all four corners of that intersection. Again, to tie in with the light poles and banners and things on 105, decorative signal poles that would integrate with those that would be used downtown. Please.
To be clear, some of the changes that TxDOT is making are happening whether we want them to or not. So this is an attempt to improve what we get and make it work best for us within their parameters of things that must be changed for safety.
Absolutely. And the projects they'll be doing, like you said, would happen with or without these thoughts. At the northeast corner of that, you all are aware of the lot that we know as the Virginia Adams lot. And the design team and the staff saw this as a great opportunity for a wonderful, highly visible landmark to welcome visitors, again, celebrating their history, their heritage. And so I understand, just since we came in, that there may be a for sale sign up on this lot, and things are always changing. But we would hope that you would be able to acquire that property or obtain a long-term lease and to create a unique gateway landmark and create a public park. I'm going to show you two ideas because we were not engaged to create detailed design, but we wanted to give you some examples of what might happen. Here's one approach to create a big Texas flag sculpture made of colorful ribbons of painted steel with letters that are a large scale saying Montgomery, that not only works from being viewed from cars, but it's a photo op that people go up and take pictures of. Our family has gone and taken Christmas card pictures at the Sam Houston sculpture on I-45, and we would see it as a landmark that people would really enjoy. This shows in plan on the right-hand side how that might work. Within behind that green area might be a park that would be a place where people gather and sit. It would also be kind of anchored the south end of downtown for your events and festivals. So downtown festival experience can expand to occupy the full downtown. Now, a completely different idea is here to perhaps move a couple of historic buildings onto the site and to essentially extend the image of downtown Montgomery to the 105 frontage. And so this just looks at that possibility. And here's some examples. Historic colonial Williamsburg offers some great examples of people, spaces in and around historic buildings. Between the buildings could be some retail or some pedestrian plaza, and the buildings could have retail or hospitality. So those are just two possibilities for how this lot might be used to really kind of claim the presence of downtown there at the frontage of 105. Now I'll move up to 149, and we'll go all the way up to the north end. So along 149, you know that this is the heart of your historic downtown. There's a 50-foot wide TxDOT state highway right-of-way along 149, and 50 feet is pretty narrow, as you probably know. It's much wider along 105. And anything, as Rebecca said, anything that's done along there would have to fall within TxDOT approval and meet their standards. But they are open to municipalities upgrading their project, and again, we've been coordinating with their engineers on these two. So we hope to provide a streetscape that's going to businesses and be welcoming to the visitors, improve safety both for drivers and pedestrians, reduce traffic congestion, have safe and convenient parking, make it easier to walk, and make it more beautiful and unified in the public streetscape. So as you come in from the north on 149, you're driving at whatever you drive, 50 miles an hour perhaps, one of the first things we want to do is to not only welcome people, but also give them a signal that they're entering an area that has more pedestrians and drivers stopping and starting and turning. And so this gateway would be a signal to slow down, or traffic calming as we call it. It would include beautification. We looked at a number of options for turn lanes and different configurations, and working with TxDOT, the recommendation is to use a traffic circle or a roundabout that is far safer than intersections with turn lanes, and it would slow traffic and really provide an opportunity to beautify the entrance into downtown from the north. And we were pleasantly surprised that TxDOT was highly in favor of a roundabout as opposed to having to have a turn lane onto Clever. Sorry, I almost forgot the name. As you move past that entrance into the core of downtown, these bullet points are outlining what I said before, that it is the heart of downtown. Anything would be done would be coordinated with TxDOT to provide a safe, walkable, connective shopping district that really attracts people to your downtown. It would hopefully include street trees and planting beds and flowers. It would have places to dine outdoors and to sit and to linger and to attract people to be around these shops and to walk from shop to shop. So this is an image of what it could be looking more. And you see the parking lot on the right and places for people to have outdoor dining and sitting along the sidewalks with street trees and planting.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You know, looking at that, well, I guess it was a slide before, did you bump? Yeah, I mean, that's common sense, whatever, but there's a rail there, and the whole idea is to block off access for traffic going in and out. That was a safety problem. That's what TxDOT was going from 149 for that whole stretch where you have walkway, walkway, walkway. We don't want any traffic there, but back one page, I mean, it could be just part of the drawing. In front of Jacob's property is a place for parallel parking. There's another parallel parking in front of Ranchers. So are we trying to eliminate all, or are we saying that it would be good to have, for some reason, 1, 2 parallel parking places there, or am I making too much of the actual drawing?
No, thank you. That's a good question, and we'll just dive into that. So, as you may know, we considered a variety of approaches for parking, including on-street parking with both head-in and parallel and various options. And it became pretty clear to us pretty quickly that with 50 feet, if you spend part of that real estate for parking, you lose that real estate for pedestrian amenities. And we even studied, well, how many parking spaces could we squeeze in, and would it be worth it? And so we were weighing the pros and cons of what you gain with that parking versus what you lose in terms of the overall enhancements. And once again, TxDOT weighed in and was very concerned about the backing motion, either backing into a parallel space or backing out of a head-in space, and really concerned about safety and congestion. So the 2 spaces that you see are, we did feel like it was important that to do drop-off or to pull in and pick up my hamburger that I've ordered online, that there are strategically located, whether it's 2 or 4 or 6, that you can pull in, park for 10 minutes, go pick up the dress that your wife ordered, or pick up your meal, or a business can pull in and drop off some things. So we wanted to have some utilitarian ability to park there and not have to park off-street. Now, I'll use your question to kind of leapfrog also. As you notice that rail, one of the things we're trying to do with off-street parking is to no longer, as I drive in along Liberty, to slow down and pull into the parking lot, but no, I turn right on one of the side streets, whether it's College or whatever, and then from that street I turn into the parking. And so as I'm driving in as a newcomer to Montgomery, what I see is all beautiful along the Liberty Street frontage, but then I can see the parking lot, we're not hiding them, but then I turn on the side street and pull into it. Does that answer your question about those?
Yeah, because what it's doing is it's trying to make traffic flow easier and to keep traffic and pedestrians from colliding essentially with each other. But in this Uber world, it might make some sense to have, you know, drive up and pick up stuff. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like we're not gaining anything by it. I don't know that it would be necessary to have 2 spots there. We're projecting 400 out of this, right?
I think it was the last meeting we had was part of a compromise to help with the resident or the businesses that do have on-street parking now, of kind of, you know, giving them some access to the property from Liberty that they'll be losing as part of this.
Yeah, kind of a trade-off.
It's like a trade-off of moving the parking away from Liberty Street.
And of course, with a long-term plan like this, you all, unless you're able to do things differently than any other municipality, you'll be implementing over time. And then each project would take detailed design. And in that time, you all can be aware of the pulse and the needs of the community. And as detailed design happens, you may decide, no, we don't want to have that, or yes, we need more. And so we wanted to have that idea in the plan, so at least it can be considered in the future.
I'm curious why you're showing overhead electric on here. Was that not part of the plan to put it underground? Or?
I really wish, and Lori and Kyle, I should have introduced Kyle Burton and Lori Cimarilci, or with Good Corporation, they're the engineers on the project, and they have had experience like ours, where clients and we have real hopes and dreams of getting that overhead power underground. And what we've discovered is that at what kind of $1 million a block,
Around there, it could be upwards of $1,000 a foot.
and so it proved problematic. And so one thing we did in Jasper, Texas recently, is we changed the poles to be higher and more uniform. That's a possibility. But it became evident really quickly that to spend that kind of money on burying overhead power, it might preempt some of the more impactful things that you could do. Is it possible to do that in the future if you all want to? Absolutely, and nothing we've done would preclude that if you all decide that that's important to you. But we felt like, given the magnitude of the other recommendations, that we didn't want to present that as a prerequisite for having a beautiful downtown.
If we had higher poles, could we string lights across 149?
I don't know how to answer that.
Because that's been something that people have talked about forever, having Christmas lights across, or, cafe lights, or nighttime ambiance.
I have seen in other small towns in Texas that are probably state highway right away where they do have things spanning the highway. Kyle, I'm going to defer to you.
It would absolutely have to be approved by TxDOT, but if you're up by that, I don't see why they would not.
Are there options for decorative poles? I've never seen a decorative overhead electric
That's
pole,
a great
but
question. And in TxDOT right away, one, you can at no charge take what they give you. Two,
Love it.
It's quite intended, isn't it? Two, they have upgraded, Kyle and I were just talking about this in another meeting, they have upgraded versions that are available through CenterPoint, and the city can pay the difference. And TxDOT will still manage them. Or you can say, forget you, TxDOT, we're going to take care of them forever, and you can buy an even nicer version. So our experience is within that kind of level 2, you can get some nice poles, they're painted and they're uniform, and so I would think that if you choose to, if you're not satisfied with the appearance of your leaning wood utility poles, that you can do something about it short of $1 million block to put them underground. Kyle, jump in.
Well, I think you hit it, Jim. I mean, typically, if you'll take a TxDOT, what they call TxDOT standard, and when it comes to street lights, it comes down a little bit to who's going to maintain it. Okay.
Yeah.
TxDOT doesn't play nice in the sandbox with CenterPoint. Okay, 2 different electrical codes. TxDOT, well, nothing to do with it. If you're going to maintain them and you want something decorative other than a TxDOT standard painted black, then they usually require the municipality or agency to have 1 or 2 in stock, so that if something gets hit, you've got to replace it, which is generally what they do.
Just in terms of interest of your time, we're willing to spend as long as you want to, but I wanted to keep things going, and we can always come back. But are there other questions about this?
I'm sorry,
Okay, I didn't know, I just got it.
it's not enough
Thank
money.
you.
So for level 2, I mean, it seems crazy to think that the city, we don't have any lift trucks or, the personnel that would be running high voltage, electricity, that kind of thing. So I mean, for us, level 2 seems to be the only option besides the standard. So what kind of price point would we have to build into our budget if we wanted to go with the option?
Why don't you let us
Okay.
do some research on it and get back to you with that? And
Can I-
please.
We just did decorative for the city of Hudson.
For the city of what?
The city of Hudson.
Okay.
The decorative poles up there, the city actually ended up buying them for contractor install, and those fancy decorative poles were $5,000 a piece.
And but TechDOT will maintain them then?
That's all well maintained.
Oh, okay. So that's the fancy part.
That's the fancy.
Okay.
If you start putting that decorative stuff in TechDOT's right away, you usually trigger what they call an AFA, or advanced funding agreement. Okay, and a right to occupy that space, and who's going to maintain what?
Okay.
Okay, like the city of Tomball, okay, the corridor along Main Street, everything back to the sidewalk is maintained by the city.
But that doesn't mean we have to have this stuff ourselves. We can hire a third party to do it.
You could.
Okay.
Sure. And this would be a great addition to your enhancements. TxDOT's not going to start improving 149 next year. It's a ways out, and so there's plenty of time for you all to kind of collect information and dial in. It's just on a lot of both 149 and 105, it's just important that you'll see at the very end of this when we're suggesting some year one action that you start thinking, okay, utilities, how does that work? So we can be ready when TxDOT's ready to roll.
Right, and to do the same thing on 105 that we're doing on 149, so that it doesn't look like,
Even better.
that the, I mean, we don't have to be matchy, but it doesn't make sense to go to standard code and then super high part. You know, we want to look somewhat cohesive.
Sure. So, some photographs and a sketch illustration, you may recognize that the shops here, just of the opportunities that are made available when, by eliminating on-street parking and making pedestrian spaces along. And so Montgomery is unique in our experience in your history, and I don't mean to be Pollyanna about it, but your history of cooperation between the public and private property owners. But the way we've been approaching this with direction from the staff is to assume that the city and private property owners are going to cooperate to create these publicly accessible amenity spaces. And this is one example. The right-of-way line is just in front of the person that's standing there in our sketch. And so there's some of the amenity spaces that are within the 11 feet of public right-of-way, and some amenity spaces are on private property that will require some cooperation. And so this slide has a lot of information, but it essentially summarizes the approach towards parking and removing on-street parking, even though the most we could even obtain was, slightly over 20 spaces, which doesn't come near to satisfying your need. The green spaces on here are ones that we would hope that you could develop a private-public strategy for parking that would become shared parking spaces, and the city or the EDC could develop a plan to work with private property owners, and that can be whatever you all work out, whether the city's going to manage them or help develop them or nothing or whatever. That's really for you all to work out. But the crux of it, in our opinion, is that you all work and develop cooperatively what is best for your community in terms of providing parking that works for everyone. The old saying, rising tide lifts all boats, kind of, that everybody benefits from this well-distributed parking infrastructure, and you already have the parking infrastructure. Just looking through to see if I've covered everything. We already talked about the safety and the access from the side streets of Caroline and College. Are there any questions? Well, the one thing I didn't mention is kind of the funny yellowish color both in the shopping center over to the left and is it Jim's Hardware to the right. Could be off-site satellite parking that you run shuttles to and from for events that would provide a great opportunity. And then, this is maybe, well, this just shows some of an example of parking in downtown Fort Worth, that they had ugly asphalt parking lots, and they didn't repave them and everything, but they put up nice fencing and planting. You can still see that it's a parking lot, but there are ways to enhance these parking lots that can be quite nice. And on the plan sketch to the left is illustrated one of the things that I've neglected to mention so far, and that is the use of several gaps between buildings and its private property that work on pedestrian throughways. And so we're encouraging that a cooperative approach with the private property owners to make the connections from Liberty Street to Pond Street or to McCowan Street, so people begin to have this interstitial matrix of places to walk throughout, because remember what we're trying to have is a downtown that encourages people just to move around freely from store to store. So those are really an important component of how that parking, whether it's on Pond and McCowan, you can park there and then you easily get up to Liberty. And the sketch in the on the lower sketch illustrates that what you call the Uber parking space that we talked about earlier. Just one example, and those can be strategically located if you all decide to pursue that. Now, way in the future, and I don't want to make this to overemphasize the importance of it, but if 10 years down the line, you all are just overflowing with success and you're turning businesses away and you don't have enough places for people to park, you could start considering other parking solutions, whether it's valet that Rebecca mentioned to me that another city is doing, or even a small parking garage. There are examples of building small parking garages with retail on the floor, ground floor, and the design character to fit into Montgomery. We don't think at all that should happen next year or 5 years from now, but it should be success-based. And we would envision that you wouldn't do it as a revenue generator, but something to enable further success of your downtown. So that may or may not ever even need to be considered. Now we're going to switch over to McCowan Street, and it has some opportunity as a fairly limited early project to perhaps as a pilot project to close a portion of McCowan between we'll call the parking lot there from College down about half of a block, and it would be open for pedestrians and for emergency vehicles and for service vehicles, but it would be a pedestrian mall. And it would have outdoor gathering spaces. It would have access to the shops you see in the background of that sketch on the left. The shops are slightly higher, about 3 feet higher than the street. And so we build up access to those. There's 3 stores, I believe, that have that higher access. There'd be decorative pavement and lighting. You mentioned the party lights going across, and that'd be something easy to do there. Excuse me. The pedestrian throughways would connect this with Liberty and have, we envision that it could really be a great accessible pedestrian space. Then just south of that, you'll see there's a large parking lot, and we would imagine reconfiguring the way that traffic moves through that to internally circulate and not have to exit northbound along McCowan. Coming from College Street south on McCowan, we would maintain the head-end parking spaces there. And then you see the lot that's at the corner of College and Liberty, we would see remaining as a parking lot, but having its access, its driveway come in from College, perhaps developing it with nice pavers, and so it becomes part of something I'll show you in a minute that's a bit of a festival space going there. Now the Jacobs lot, as I mentioned, realigning the parking area over to College Street, improving the parking with enhanced pavement and direct decorative fencing around it and themed lighting. And next to it, could be developed out in front of your little pavilion, could be a festival lawn. You may have seen it at City Center in Houston or other places. The south edge could be enhanced as a pedestrian throughway, and it could really be an anchor of the north end of downtown, right across the street from the community center, and then just consider McCowan Street, kind of and along with Liberty, being where people flow back and forth in a festival. And so this could really be, we think, a project to get a lot of bang for your buck early on, and you could close the little parking if you wanted to for a festival, or leave it open, or however you wanted to manage that. Across the street, we wanted to at least include some ideas for the community building, and we know that you all may have other considerations for the community building, but even with the building staying exactly as it is, the site could be enhanced to increase the parking, to provide overflow event parking on the north side that would be lawn on a day-to-day basis. The grounds could be developed as a quiet park where you can have picnic tables and benches and be a day-to-day park, but also function really nicely as part of a festival or an event. So we think that one of the next steps you might do is to develop an overall master plan as you consider what you want the community building to be long term. Flatbrook Drive, just a block of it is within our project area, but it's an important north edge, of the project area. And so while we're just looking at it for one block, we believe that this has implications for Klepper going east. You'll know that it goes down past whatever the historic building site is on the north side of it, and on down to other things in the school property. And so we envision that that's going to become a more and more important, thank you, Laura, important connection into historic downtown. So it currently has, I believe, it's like 16 feet of roadway. It's fairly narrow, and it's roadside ditches. And so we're envisioning that when you all are ready to widen the road to your standard 28 feet, 2 lanes with curb and gutter, that you would then fill in the ditches, have storm drain piping underneath. That would then enable you to build sidewalks on the north side that might be 10 or 12 feet wide to accommodate bikes, pedestrians, golf carts, everything. And then on the south side, have a more normal 5-foot wide sidewalk. And on the north side, it would give you the ability to have a little bit of separation from the street, to have street trees and lawn, and really connect in with what we hope Klepper will be extending all the way east. At its intersection with Prairie Street is an entrance, a minor entrance into historic downtown. And so whenever you develop Klepper Street, whenever you upgrade Klepper Street, you could look at upgrading that Prairie Street intersection. Prairie Street is a pretty quiet street that we felt comfortable just walking down the middle of the street most of the time. And that may be what it is for a number of years. But knowing that this is a long-term vision, if the development of downtown goes in such a way that you have people buying up some of those properties, and where the little donkeys are now, maybe that's a 4-story hotel, or who knows what the future might hold. But if the character and the level of activity along Prairie Street changes, we envision that it really might maintain a less urban and more suburban appearance, maybe a traditional, if you all are experienced with a traditional neighborhood design that would have sidewalks and street trees and still be a kind of a quiet neighborhood street, but enable your pedestrians to get off of the street. And so that's that's not something that's a couple of years away, but again, like parking garages, the plan needs to respond to the way that your downtown develops over time. This is just a big picture saying that all the things we've been talking about are establishing a hierarchy of improvements with major entrances and minor entrances and street signs and benches and all of the furnishings, the easy things of urban design would be coordinated throughout the historic downtown. And an important part of it is the coordination between the civic or the publicly funded improvements and the things that private property owners do. And ideally, you have them on board and doing things in coordination, and so things look compatible with one another. Lori, you want to take care of time?
I'm going to start on a different topic really quick with zoning and land use. As you know, there are multiple zoning and land uses identified within your downtown area. So part of our recommendation to that area is to review your existing overlay districts and zoning districts and consider developing a historic downtown district to help address any concerns you may have, including facade articulation, building setbacks, signage attached or detached from the buildings, and landscaping. It's just something to consider in the future for development reasons. On to utilities. We looked at your utilities very high scale, and looking at it, we're making the recommendation that you evaluate your existing utility conditions in the downtown area, and you develop a utility master plan for that, so you can have the right utilities to support the development that potentially can come into downtown. Drainage-wise, we also looked at recommending a development of a downtown master drainage plan that'll help determine how your drainage is going to work in downtown, so you can alleviate any concerns that may come up, and you can address them now or within the next 3, 5, 10 years, so that development can come in and you have a plan for that. Consider converting all of your open drainage to underground systems. That will help with development and the limitations you have in the downtown area, and then coordinate all your drainage projects with street improvements so that you don't do double duty and dip into the money pot too many times. For roads, you need to consider developing typical road sections and then 28 feet. That's a good standard. Montgomery County has a 24-foot standard, which we're finding is really narrow. It's becoming a little more harder for cars to pass and other concerns, especially safety concerns. So if you consider a little wider section, that eases traffic and alleviates some concerns there. Like before, you should always coordinate with utilities and your drainage improvements. And then you can evaluate incentives for privately funded road improvements combined with the adjacent developments. Wayfinding and signage. We know you have a wayfinding signage. You want to consider a comprehensive one for the downtown, where it also looks at the outside areas. So you have wayfinding not just in your downtown, but on the outskirts of your town, so that you point people to where you want them to come and what you want them to see. And then consider it in the murals with historic or cultural themes on buildings if you want to promote those. For implementation, we were looking at collaborative efforts. The downtown area is what you want to entice people to come to, so you really need to look at your private businesses, your nonprofit organizations, and governmental entities where you can get partnerships so you can collaborate and get the best bang for your buck as you go through these processes. Now, financial tools and funding mechanisms, there are a lot of them out there, and a lot of jurisdictions get a little scared or intimidated by them, but some of them have come a long way. The EDC itself can set up a matching grant program for businesses that can include facade improvements, signage, landscaping, etc., as long as it's within your realms of what you can do within your group that's dictated by local government code. You can also look at doing a downtown block grant program that's state funded, seeing if you're eligible for it. If you have any projects adopted by the city council, then there's a better chance for funding and making them available during your cycle. Job incentive programs for the EDC, that's a way to do it for primary and non-primary jobs. You can look at low interest loan programs for the different improvements you want to do in the area. You can look at education education and training programs. This does go outside just the downtown area. It is something the EDC can look at as a whole to develop for programs within the city. You have tax incentives, you have abatements, where you can target your tax relief. You've got the tax development and investment zone. Some cities are really going forward with this, where it's a tax that's applied within a zoned area, that you get a little more money, but the improvements go back specifically for that area. So if you did it and you want to do storm drainage projects, the taxes would just go to that area for storm drainage. You can't apply it anywhere else in the city. You have, and like I said, this is general for the EDC too. It's the public improvement districts. You have targeted infrastructure incentives where I say you're using them with private development. You have your capital improvement funding that the city runs, that they can include projects in. Incubator spaces is a new thing that EDC are tackling, that they're developing so that incubator businesses can come in and start and have some relief and help in the process. And then you have your strategic land purchases for EDC. So we have a proposed capital improvement plan, which is broken up into short-term, medium-term, and long-term projects. So what we're looking at is short-term means 1 to 3 years. The downtown master drainage plan, we're looking at approximately $50,000. The second one is develop public and private partnerships for parking agreements. That's those areas where people currently park, or you guys have agreements, make sure the agreements are up to date, or work with new landowners so that you have agreements for parking and you don't have any concerns of people threatening to tow or any other things like that. And that is really just staff time and consulting fees for setting up the agreements. Downtown utility master plan, $50,000 is estimated and the city will fund that portion of it. McCown Street reconstruction with streetscape is, we're recommending within the first 3 years, is for $1 million. And that's the stuff that Jim went over. So that gives you an idea of what you're looking at based on how you move forward with a complete design and reconstruction of that street. And the Jacob Lot improvements were $450,000. One thing on all of these plans to consider is this tiny print at the bottom, which says the cost estimates are done in today's dollars. So when you do your estimating for your next budget year, add 4%. That's sort of typical. And then the following year, add 4% onto what you did on that previous year. That way you have better numbers going into your budget cycle.
You left the 0 off the 40. You mean 40%? Just kidding. Just trying to be real, you
You
know?
might get more bang for your buck. It would be beneficial, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. And all our cost estimates were developed within the downtown area only, so we can go outside the area. So if we say Clever Street, that's off at that boundary. It doesn't keep going through the entire street, just so like you guys know that. And one thing to consider is potential costs when working with TechSpot. They can go higher, but there are grants and funds out there that can help you guys get the best bang for your buck on moving through programs so that the city's not fronting all the money. TechSpot's contributing and you're getting a better deal out of it. And then when we talk about some improvements, we didn't include utility and drainage improvements in the areas because we want the evaluation of those plans to tell you what improvements you need to do. Okay, for medium, there's a longer list. So your 3 to 5 years. Anything in your medium term and long term, don't put off to year 3 or 5. Consider it now, start working through the process because there is a lot of communication, organization, negotiations you have to go through depending on the project. And that way you're really at the forefront of it and you're not letting it slide because if you let it slide, it takes longer and certain things may not happen as fast as you want. The Adams Lot with the monument and parking, we estimate $500,000. That's today's dollars, not in 3 years. Just to reiterate, John A. Butler and Prairie intersection reconstruction is $550,000. Community building property master plan. This is if you want to redevelop that property in a different way, a different fashion. You want to keep the building, add amenities, change the building, change the function of the property. Just do a master plan for that so you get the best thing for your property. You don't start parking well in the years you say, oh, we don't want parking there, you have to redo it. And then the master plan implementation, we're estimating about $350,000, but that's not including if you redo the building at all. Maiden Lane reconstruction and streetscape, we estimate $330,000, $630,000. Prairie Street reconstruction and streetscape, $680,000. A parking analysis and recommendation. This is only if you think your parking really needs to be reevaluated. You want to see how your shared parking agreements are working, your public parking is working for you. Go back and analyze that process. See if you're during events you're struggling with parking. In 3 to 5 years, you'll get a better idea of where you are, and we're estimating $25,000 to do that. Wayfinding and signage study. That's if you want to change your plans for your wayfinding, increase it based on the problems that you have in the downtown. Look at that, evaluate it. Remember to bring your outside corners of the city, put signage there so you're directing people to this downtown area, or any other key points in the city you want to consider. Copper Street reconstruction, we're estimating $400,000. Pond Street improvements, $750,000. And we're on to the last two, long term, which is the 5 to 10 years. Like I said, don't let it slip. Start thinking about it now, even though it's in the future. FM 149 reconstruction with streetscape, we're estimating $2.5 million. That's without right-of-way acquisition. TxDOT may determine that as part of the process if you need them. They may say they have enough right-of-way based on what they want. But at least if the city council adopts the plan, then it's in a plan that you can either get grant funding for in the future, or TxDOT will consider it as the city pays their portion to do the improvements as part of their project. Same with 149 Liberty Roundabout, $1.25 million. Same situation, we didn't include it because the roundabout we wanted to break out separately, because you can do that as a separate project depending on your phasing and your timing of it. State Highway 105, improvements in streetscape, we're looking at $2 million. Same thing, coordinate with TxDOT, start the conversation, see where the grant funding, or if there's eligible TIP funding that's coming available. These projects would be great to get on the TIP, which is the Transportation Improvement Plan, which is done by HGAC. They have cycles that come out and you submit them and you get on that, and you have potential to get funding. The city of Tomball applied in 2015 for a $30 million grant. They got $28 million because they get to pay the $2 million, $3 million. So that's a consideration working through these projects to see how much you can stretch your dollar. And then the last is private property improvements. We did talk about private property improvements. City council, obviously, the city funds can't be spent on it. The EDC is a little different because you can spend money on private property. So you can work in this in collaboration with owners depending on how you set up your goals and regulations for that. So we looked at McCowan Street with ramps and decks to help that pedestrian access due to those ramps may have to be reconfigured with the improvements at $500,000. The parking lot on the northwest corner of McCowan Street and South Carolyn Street, $150,000. And then 149 reconstruction of streetscapes, $370,000. And that's the areas that go outside that right of way. Those seating patios, walkways, any improvement, streetscapes with trees, or benches, and stuff like that. And that's the end of our presentation. So you guys can hit us up with questions.
Do anyone have any specific questions for them?
I just have a few. First off, thank you for the thorough presentation. It was great. And the city appreciates the vision, for sure. I know I do. I have a question regarding TxDOT and how they play into all this. Can you educate us just a little bit as to the process? And can they reject our plans, based on what you sort of conceptualized?
Quick off, yes, they can reject anything, but, to be honest, but they typically don't. They like working with the jurisdictions. They want good working relationships. Tomball, they're working with them pretty diligently to move forward with Tomball's vision of their downtown Main Street 2920 and what they want for their streetscape. They've done it in the city of Brenham, where they worked with them when Brenham used to have both sides of the county block used to be two ways, and they reconfigured to single ways for 105. They worked with them in the process, in the paving, the pavers, and the beautifications of it. So TxDOT can say no, but they usually don't, but they do say you have to pony up.
Gotcha. Do you, are they slow to react? Are we, just curious, I know government seems to move at a little bit of a snail's pace, but,
It depends on the project and their priority on it,
okay.
or in your priority on it. So if the city's ready to go and TxDOT's ready to go, you pretty much will keep it moving pretty well.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying, how do you know they're ready to go? I mean, is there a process involved?
TxDOT usually puts out their programs of what streets they want to work on in the next 5 to 10 years, is that right? Or is it longer?
Yeah, they produce a plan. Part of what this document helps you do is, through doing, putting this together, we did coordination with the director of planning and design for the Houston district.
Gotcha.
We went to the top.
Got it.
We also did some coordination with your local area engineer for TxDOT, out of the Conroe office who handles this area. They liked what they saw, okay? It plays in with what they would like to see.
Good.
And the good thing about one of these documents is you have that stuff in place. Okay, so that when HGAC or somebody does do a call for projects, you've got a start on your documentation, you've already vetted it through those TxDOT people. And so they'll come in, just like Tom Hall, we went through the same process, okay? A number of planning documents, they were in a good position, a call for projects came up, TxDOT said, Tom Hall, go for it, we got your back, we'll support you. Okay, and they got funded for a $28 million project.
How soon did that happen from where we are now?
We're still in the process of negotiating the agreement between the city and the state.
Okay.
What was the duration between when they had this plan, we'll call it, and when the fall
6
were?
years.
years? Okay.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
Well, they got funded in 2015.
Yeah, there's the
The-
downtown and the Liberty Centers plans they did them in 2008 and 9. Those plans were on the shelves, but they were there, so when we went from 2015, here you go, this is what we want.
Now, the city of Tomball had, okay, after those planning documents were produced, the city did start initiating recommendations in there. Okay, so they had showed really good faith in going through the planning process, adopting a plan, and then starting implementation for things like, okay, one of them was getting parking off of Main Street, FM 191. City constructed a bunch of off-street public parking lots. Okay, they took the access management study to the next level, did a livable center study. So they took action. They had a history of taking action to better support TxDOT saying, we got your back on Main Street. Okay? So it's just a process, and having these documents, doing the coordination up front, getting their buy-in really helps you. It puts you in a better position. Okay, so TxDOT, and I think Dave applied for some sidewalk stuff. Okay? It's having those documents on the shelf, ready, having done your homework. We're ready, Joe Town in the South, you're not. And so it gets you better scores when you do apply for those.
Who oversees the process? Is it a firm like yours, or is it a multiple contractor,
Generally, when you get a call for projects in this area, it runs through HGAC.
Okay,
Houston Gallup Area Council, they're the mobility
okay,
guru for this area. Okay, so there's an application process, there's a number of documents that got to be prepared to support the objective and the cost of that project. And that all goes into a committee, and they sort them out. And
based on your current, I guess, timeline, if we call it that, I know it's kind of a moving target. what do you think the long-term, or even the short-term, let's start with the short-term impact on the businesses, the local businesses, infrastructure improvements, underground drainage systems? It seems like every time they dig, they break something. I know I run into that quite a bit. Tell me a little bit about that.
So with regards to utilities and drainage, it just depends on the condition that it's in currently, what is proposed out of the new master plans. They could impact them, they usually don't impact them greatly. A lot of cities know how to go in behind with either contractors or crews and do those tie-ins and that construction work where it does affect the business, but not too bad.
And as far as, street rescapings and things like that, what's the typical timeline of that impact for a business? Because obviously we don't want to negatively impact those businesses as they're being, I know it's kind of like you got to pull the Band-Aid off, I understand that, but is there some way to mitigate that? Go ahead.
An example is when we did Huntsville, it was a sidewalk on two sides of a street. So we interrupted a lot of businesses along there, and you mitigate it by making sure they have access to their business at the time, if you're redoing their sidewalk. So it's just coordinating with those businesses at the time too, so that they know what impact's coming, when it's coming, and we try to minimize that as much as possible.
We've done things like evening pours, coordinating business hours with those abutting.
That's
people.
good, yeah.
If to maintain pedestrian access across the front of the business, we've done things like bring boardwalks out.
Gotcha.
Where you got the room to do that.
Yeah, just
to get people out and around.
Right, I understand. Yeah, so you look at their obviously you don't want to disrupt their business it as little as possible, but still keep progress moving along.
Absolutely.
Understood, yeah.
You can do off-hour, construction pieces.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
And Jeff, if I can add one thing,
Yeah.
point on top of what Kyle has said there, and that's, in the areas that we're talking about here, there are upgrades to these utilities and the roads that will have to be made
No matter what.
regardless of whether a
Yeah.
plan like this moves forward or not. Our hope is to be able to tie that together so it's coordinated in a way that it gets done one time, not say a wastewater project, and then you do a road, and you start the road to do a water project. We want a plan that's, works and flows through all of it. But even if, a downtown plan like this were not done, the water lines still have to be redone at some point, the wastewater lines, the roads, and so I just wanted to...
No, I was actually going to point to you and ask you about that because I know we have ongoing construction now already, probably for other development that's going on throughout the city. But yeah, I think we're going to have to do it no matter what, and that's more city council,
But that's always been my objection to MEDC spending money on McCown, is that that it's rotten underneath, and that you're just going to spend money, laying new asphalt and then ripping it back up again.
Right.
Because, there are pipes that are leaking under there that we just let leak because it's too expensive. You have to commit to the whole project in order to rip up somebody's parking lot or to rip up the road. You just don't do these exploratory digs for, a small problem. But, we should do this all at once and at the highest quality that is possible for our municipality and our budget. We shouldn't just do it a small chunk and then rip it up and then do something else and then rip that up and expect to get a quality result.
I think the problem of the decade for Montgomery is parking. There's no question about it. We are all aware of that. Have you considered or worked with or dealt with in any other communities? I like the suggestions that you had, but I think, and maybe for short term, but long-term solutions, I know it's garage parking or something, I know they're kind of ugly, but there's ways to make them pretty. I think in Kansas City, they had the public library actually look like books on the outside. I mean, there's ways to streetscape it and create that vintage feel. But have you guys ever been involved in a project or know of other projects where they've had a creative approach to parking? Because that's really our problem right now.
Well, we've worked on several. We're working on one right now in downtown Houston for Metro.
Yeah.
And it's going vertical with parking is exponentially more expensive.
Right.
Okay, number one. You go from $4,000 to $6,000 in parking stall to 12 or 15,000 to go vertical. Okay, so it's finding some surface solutions is best option number one.
Yeah.
Okay? Best bang for your buck. But there are some ways to item, so to speak, and I think Jim had a couple in his presentations where you stack them on top of the retail or other usable space below.
Is that what you're talking about with the ramps?
No, the ramps I was talking about is the curb access ramps for pedestrians.
Got it, okay.
You're talking about event parking
Yeah.
primarily? Yeah. Because that's a different problem than day-to-day parking because that's only happening a couple times a year.
And if I could interject.
And, yeah, go ahead.
We've dealt a lot in Herman Park with the zoo, and
Yeah.
you know, they've got a car parking lot in the middle of Herman Park, and one thing that they've struggled with is it's really not viable to design parking for your 2 to 3 days of highest use. It just doesn't make sense.
Right.
And then it sits at a 40% capacity for the other days. And so that's why, well, I'll make 2 points and not to argue directly with you, but I would maintain that you probably have more capacity right now
Gotcha.
in downtown
Then we know about it.
than you know about.
Yeah.
And that what we're hoping is that with this wonderful everybody play nice together approach of a public-private cooperative approach to parking is I think you have more capacity than you would expect.
Okay.
But then
Yeah.
for, sorry,
Ryan?
Right.
Ryan, thank you. For the events, those big days where people expect to maybe take a shuttle or other things like that, that's where we're hoping that you could take advantage of these big lots that are already there that may not have high business loads on those event days.
Yeah.
And so, personally, I would hope you never even have to think about a parking garage or something.
Yeah, they're ugly.
Spend tens of thousands of dollars.
And they're expensive, it sounds like. Last question, and I'll let the other directors talk. I don't mean to hog the space here, but have we ever thought about a trolley system or something along the lines like Galveston uses? I mean, have y'all been involved where?
So municipal public transport is like the biggest money sink you've ever heard of.
Money what?
Sink.
Sink,
I
okay.
mean, it's a disaster, a public policy disaster, unless, you're hoping for improving the planet. greenhouse
Well, I'm
gas.
thinking maybe even a third-party trolley of some sort. Like, you go to Boston or you go to some of these other cities where they get, I'm
So
not,
if you're thinking of like the duck tours or something like that, and looking at the idea of having people park out at the high school and do a duck tour to downtown, that might be a possibility for dealing with our problems with parking. Because Richard, if you had, say, $20,000 per parking space and you bought a 200 parking garage, what's the interest on that?
Optimistically, 2.5% to 3% probably, and if the interest rates rising, by the time we could take action, it might be 4% plus.
So what are my payments per year?
Pricing.
So, you're looking at maybe $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year, plus maybe $50,000 of maintenance. So, I mean, if you're just looking at that for 3 or 4 or 5 weekends a year, that buys you a lot of duck tours.
And then you're also looking at, you have an operating lifespan in addition to the annual maintenance there.
Right. So, I mean, it kind of gets to the point where you think, and I've been arguing for a parking garage for a long time. So before Bill and Jim had talked me out of that crazy idea, or at least it diverted me on my path.
yeah.
Our experience is that in spite of the way things I would like to be, is we, including me, still want to be able to drive in my car with nobody else in it
Yeah,
and park relatively close.
yeah,
And to where I'm going, I think for events, and this is just my opinion, for events, a fun trolley or something like that would be great, that you can have someone come in and do it, and you're not managing drivers and vehicles and gas and all of that.
right. Yeah, I was just curious. Just looking for a creative solution because the events seem to be, we're getting more and more of them, and we're encouraging more and more of them, and they bring more and more people into our area and commerce and whatnot, but
It will become a nuisance because they park like in front of my house and everyone on our street, we all have to put reflectors up because they're going to tear up our grass. And if we do it more and more, right now we're just, okay, we like to promote our city, but if you're doing it every other weekend or once a month, it's going to become a big nuisance and it will become a bigger problem.
it's already a problem. I mean, in my place, just in the last 3 weeks, we've had our entire parking lot just filled to capacity. Our customers couldn't, our rank and file customers couldn't even get in. Had we have had a big event like weddings, which are booked years in advance sometime, they would have annihilated the parking, in which case we would have been, I'm just talking from but I know Ryan and others are having the same issue. So parking is the problem. I mean, they definitely, I don't disagree that collaboration with the businesses are the way to go, but in the short term, but in long term, I think we're just going to continue to see the growth. We have a lot of rooftops coming around this area, and there's going to be even more coming.
But close to downtown, I mean, you have Lincoln Elementary, you've got Montgomery Elementary, you've got the ISD building.
Yeah.
We have a great relationship with the ISD. You know, it'd be easy to do a partnership if we rolled in, you know,
Some creative solution and something fun for, I don't disagree that you want to park close, but, you know, when you go to the rodeo, you'd love to park close there too, but you need to park at the old Astroworld or
In
whatever.
those special events, or when, at least personally, I'm ready to do some different way of parking. On a Tuesday, when I go to Kroger, I want to park and go in, but if I'm going to an Astros game, I know I'm going to park 8 blocks away and
Yeah.
walk or take a bicycle taxi or something. That it's an event, and I'm ready to do something different.
Make a different choice, yeah.
Well, it's important to note that we don't have this problem generally Monday through Friday.
Agreed,
and
yeah.
on 3/4 of the weekends. we'll say.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. And it's good to hear about the schools and the relationships with those, because I believe that would probably solve some of the issues if we could get access to those and then provide some transportation.
I think we
maybe-
need to think about being part of the solution.
And maybe as a part of the expense of each event, that we include some type of shuttling expense.
For sure.
To help mitigate some
I
of
think
that.
they
Yeah,
already
those guys are
do,
on
and
contract, you can get those shuttles for
Oh, for nothing.
So we need to partner with places that have large parking lots like the schools and then implement
And I
shuttles.
think that, you know, the events already have shuttles, they have parking like in fields and things like that over closer to CB Stewart.
Do we need to
Ransom's area, there's a ton.
have signage and marketing for that or something?
Not as much. So that needs to be, that's one of the things I was thinking about for the map meet, is to have a events page where it very clearly delineated where you're supposed to park. And so that map could be, you know, cycled out for every event and be very specific, you know, and we promote parking essentially on social media.
I got one last question. I apologize. I just want to make sure I understand. Why McCown first? Just curious. Is that because it's like the apex of where we want to begin?
It was kind of identified by staff and the committee we met with, that was kind of a key corridor that you guys wanted to start on. Because Liberty and 105 will take longer because
Gotcha.
of the tech stock coordination.
I think it's good. I'm just curious as to what the
You
reason.
have complete control over the right of
I know you
way.
have to ask permission.
But we don't have the land yet, right? Not yet.
Well, you know, McCown there, we're talking about the road.
Right with them
Yeah,
again.
and, you know, the road is a city road. You know, the city has utilities in that area.
Gotcha.
So it's an area, Jim said, you know, we have the full control over that area.
We can begin sooner than later on something like that.
Right, I mean, it's something that we can begin, beginning doesn't mean, work starts, in 3 months.
Right.
There's a lot of planning and development that has to go with it.
Yeah.
and
Well,
get it up to- But it's a calendar that we control much more than, when you start talking about a state road there, then you're talking years of getting that done.
So for instance, we all like the Klepper Street, I assume, the connectivity of the library to the downtown, but that would require right-of-way acquisition, which could be several years potentially to do that. But that's something we could start.
I don't know that it does, because I think that we have the right of way, we just haven't
Okay.
built on it.
But that's a medium to long-term project, so.
We have the utilities on both sides, so we should have enough space.
And there's nothing saying you can't decide if you want to do a medium project.
Yeah, or I was wondering maybe we could just do the sidewalk portion
Yeah.
of the Clipper
A lot
project.
of people walking up the
Do the
center.
street and the sidewalk together because the street is it's too high and it's too cramped. It needs to be
Done together. That was one of my questions, is that a project that can be split or not?
And the crux is drainage. Right now, you have roadside ditches.
You have to convert it
And
to,
so to convert those to pipes, you need curb and gutter, and so it kind of becomes a holistic project.
But I think we could do half of it and not all of it. I think you could do the sidewalk side and leave the bike/golf cart side, do another project if we fix the,
I would recommend designing everything as a
Yes.
whole.
and the construction
And
part.
then phase your construction according to what you want to move forward with. And just remember, this number is just the downtown.
Right.
It stops at Prairie. It doesn't go any further. So if you're going to continue with Prairie, you've got to consider that. And obviously, if you do a sidewalk, you don't want to stop it.
right. No, that is, I've also tried to stop this project because they haven't been wide enough or they've been short and too short or whatever. It's definitely been, plans without an overall comprehensive goal for the cement has been a problem. So, but I agree, Ryan, I'd like to see that as being a thing too. I think we can have more than one thing going at a time. And I think that should be one of the ones that's part of the project.
That's a good idea.
And Jim touched on it a little bit, and I want to re-stress it's important to go back and take a look at your utility plan and your drainage plan.
Right. Well, I happen to know the answer to that there. We've got a 6 or 8 inch water line there, which is adequate because we've also hooked into Lone Star Parkway with all the roads in there, so we're good. Right there, and city sewer, it all slides downhill to Lone Star Parkway, so.
And in drainage, you don't want to find out that you've got to run 2,000 feet outside of downtown to get your outfall point. Because
Right.
not a lot of cost,
Right,
not a lot of visual.
right. It's also very, yeah. It's a high point right there, so it's convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I had.
On y'all's costs, you said that we have to pony up for the 149 improvements, but there's mutual benefit to say like a roundabout. That TxDOT likes that because it's going to reduce traffic congestion and accidents at the intersection. So what does pony up mean for us? We like the roundabout, I'm sure they like it too.
That's a trick because in their plan for Liberty or 149, it may not include a roundabout. So and it depends. If they come back and design and say they want a roundabout, then they help you with it. It would just be the beautification sides potentially. And it depends on if you go through the grant, that the call for HGAC projects, which is what we highly recommend you do because you can get more bang for your buck with TxDOT contributing than you guys just bring into a straight AFA with TxDOT.
I mean, TxDOT will let you build their facility in their right of way all day long.
Yeah, but we don't really, why would we do that? Especially if they want it too.
They'll
So.
sign that AFA tomorrow.
We're good to go.
But you're just better off trying to program with their improvements or wait for a call for projects to get it funded.
So we're kind of at the mercy of their timeline then, if we really want them to pony up their end, I guess? Or is there some type of,
Well, they keep threatening to do a call for projects here before the end of the year. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. What I can tell you is the Houston District has got approved a $2.2 billion budget next year.
That's a lot.
Well, did I understand that you were also saying that if we have everything prepared and we're ready to go and they do come in with one of these calls, I mean, we're
It really helps better position you.
right
Is
instead
there
of,
anything else we need to do besides this, and if city council approves it, and obviously we approve it, is there, what else is next to get us an A++ rating?
Well, it's like the alternative projects that are the sidewalk. Okay. Having a plan in place, it sure helps.
Okay, so moving forward on some of these projects as well, say that we're serious about our plan, it's not just.
Show me you're committed.
Okay.
You're committed to it. Okay. And again, we can certainly review whatever powers to be at Tech Stop and help you get there.
And I'm certainly not a TxDOT expert, but just an observation of meeting several times with the head of design and the local engineer, is just them being aware of what you're doing and that you're coordinating, that they know you're interested in moving forward with this north entry, et cetera, et cetera. I think that they were very encouraging, would be my take on it.
You know, when we presented the roundabout to them, I figured they'd give us a big hell no. It was not the case. Let's put you in touch with our roundabout designer so that we can help you optimize. So it was really a good relationship, good feedback.
I mean, obviously the last time we met with them, it was less than enthusiastic relationship to begin. So this is a different attitude from both of us.
And my impression was they want to have a good relationship with local entities. And like Kyle said, they were ready to have us meet with their roundabout designers. I think the more they know about what you're doing, the better.
Well, this would certainly be a showpiece for them. If they did both 105 and 149.
They were okay with all the improvements at 149 and 105, the intersection with the star and the colors and all that kind of stuff. They're cool with that?
Well, we didn't show you the things that they didn't like.
No point.
They may have just worn them down, but
Jim, I just want one last thing. If you ever quit your day job, you definitely should narrate children's books. You have a very calming
We have 28-year-old twins, and I did a lot of narration.
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, I could sit and listen to you all day.
I'll read Hank the Cowboy. Good specialty voices.
Wow. Anyway, thank you. The presentation was great, though. Yeah. Where do we go from here, Becky?
So the item on the agenda is consideration of possible action to accept the downtown design master plan, and then also I think we should direct staff to present this to the city council for their acceptance of it as well, because that sounds like that's an important component.
Well, I'm ready to make a motion on number one. I'll make a motion, we accept the downtown design master plan.
I'll second it.
It has been moved and seconded that we accept the downtown design master plan. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? Would anyone also like to direct staff to present to the city council for their approval?
Yeah, I'll make a
Is
motion.
that where the direction we'd like to go?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All those in favor of accepting the downtown design master plan, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will accept the downtown design master plan. Item number 2, consideration of possible action to move forward with elements contained in the downtown master design plan. We've kind of already spoken on these items, so it's just a continuation of our discussion. Richard, would you like to introduce it, or should we just carry on as we work?
I think we're engaged in pretty productive discussion there.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've got the people who wrote it in the room with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think even what Ryan brought up about supper, it really makes sense to, like Lori said, do the planning for the entire project. But I think, just shading down the road a couple inches, maybe like 5, because if that counts as a couple, or 6, whatever it is, to get it level with where it comes out to 149. I mean, it's ridiculously high in the ground. And I think that's part of the drainage problem that they have over at the Historical Society's building. But if we could get a sidewalk that meets the recommended amount in the master plan on the south side and going from Maiden all the way to Bessie Price Owens.
And that gets in the area of where the city has already applied for grant money to, from the sidewalk that includes from 149 to Bessie Price Owen and then north, past the library.
Okay.
And so we were told to expect to hear back on that grant sometime in October. Well, we're here early November, we still have not heard, so it's been any day for the last 4 weeks.
The grant is from where to where? Sorry.
149, along Klepper, to Bessie Price Owen, and then we turn towards the north and go past the library.
Where would you
towards
put a
the-
sidewalk on Klepper between the communities, from 149 to Maiden? You're going past the community center parking. Just curious, is that parking above the wall? And I don't love sidewalks that go behind parked cars.
I'm trying to remember an old conversation with Dave, who was the one who made the application. I think in that area, he was looking on the north side, away from where the parking is in the community center, and then heading across over, when you pass the downtown area and you started out towards the school, towards Fernley.
Richard, that's consistent with what our conclusions were, is there you needed to be. Unless you're going to be on the community center property,
Yeah.
you need to be over on the north side.
And the problem there gets to be, I think everyone here is probably familiar with it, with the north side of community center property, sidewalk there just rolls right through where there's parking, including where it was just paved for parking.
Right.
So you have an either-or proposition unless you want to then impact the wall that's around the property, which I don't think is.
I think that's the one historic thing that actually exists on that property. I won't hurt my chances of re-election by saying what I think about the community center building, but.
Whereas the north side of that area, you've got you have some business property, and as you move to the east, you have residential property.
Right.
So you've got driveways and walkways that are approaching the road, that the sidewalk could be planned to interact with those.
Right. And then we have the option for the smaller gateway
That's a good
intersection of
beginning,
Prairie and
actually.
Klepper. Do you think it would be doable to get this done and under construction and completed by September or August rather when the school year starts? Because I would like to have the disruption during school if possible.
And you've got a number of moving parts there that may interact, and that is, are we talking about this as a project that would be the EDC, that is exclusive of anything that might come from this grant? That would be then the EDC taking on 100%. The grant the city's applied for that we're still waiting an answer on is an 80-20 grant, which is a 20% grant from the city. The EDC could participate in that 20% towards the city, or the EDC could choose to, if it wanted to expand that sidewalk beyond within that grant, meaning you want to extend it past Bessie Price Owen Park to the east. We could look at starting to design work on those parts earlier, but otherwise I think you have to follow, if we're going to be part of working on the cities, we've got to be part of that project, not running past it.
I think it's ridiculous to turn down free money, so.
When it's 80%.
Yes. that-
Yeah, for sure.
Close enough.
And I think
We'll take it.
we should have known by now, so I don't know when we'll know. But I would expect, since I have an October date, we should know in the next, over the next week or two. We're 2 weeks out from the next EDC meeting. I would expect we have a better answer to that by that meeting. I wish I could give you a better answer now, I didn't mean to, but I think that's an opportunity where the EDC can partner with the city. The city has to get that grant, the EDC can't.
Right, and also as part of this, so the EDC or the city would have to deal with Klepper. So I would personally feel comfortable with the EDC paying the 20 and the city to do Klepper. I mean, because that's not going to be free. Even if you get the county to do the work, it's still.
Right, I mean, there's definitely a cost there. The county is very cognizant, even when the county does work for the city on roads, it's not done, free for the city. The city is paying for the cost there, and the county has become, in recent years, much more cognizant of their actual cost versus their estimated cost. And that has been us picking up the tab. In reality, we're picking up the tab all along because we're all county taxpayers. But I think that goes to show you an example of how, the city and the EDC's money together can get partners for maximum results. As it was mentioned during part of the report, there's things the city can spend money on and things it can't. There's things that you can spend money on, and things you can't. If you find the ways to push those together, there are ways to maximize those abilities. And in the current fiscal year's budget, there is money allocated towards some sidewalk work, some street work, as well as downtown development. So that money is already budgeted and is available for the kind of thing that we're talking about. It would also certainly go over $10,000, meaning it would have to be also approved by city council. But as part of a cooperative planning project, I think that is about as sure of getting as possible.
Of course, yeah.
And I'm not sure if the county would be able to do all the work we need to if we're also lowering buffer. I mean, I think that their practices of milling and asphalting are part of how we got the nice crown. So, we have to.
There's certainly private companies out there that also could be considered for that work. And I know that we have a year or two, at least 2 different engineering companies go through the process. They rely for appropriate private companies that might really be considered for that.
Okay. Does everyone else agree with the clever sidewalk ideas for sure on this?
Love it.
What are you thinking about some of the other plans? Oh, sorry, can I ask Richard, when I'm talking about the city using its money, are you guys going to jump for the downtown utility master plan?
Well, the utility master plan is part of work that's being done currently with the engineering staff, because this is the year, I think you may remember, right, I think a lot of this board won't understand that as part of our capital improvement planning, because of our impact fees, we have to review that every 5 years. We're talking this year. So it's something that is it's something that we're looking at this winter.
But does that have to do with the actual underground pipes, what they are, whether they're terrible, when they should be replaced, that kind of thing?
Well, we're talking about, for that, it's talking about capacity, but then.
But you can add some of that in there.
I believe so. And with, I have my back turned to the city engineer, and I haven't yet been hit by a flying object. But what is well known already for this is that the pipes in that area definitely need work.
Right.
And it isn't just the road, it's the pipes. They're performing the job adequately now. If what we want to accomplish, hopefully benefits businesses by more people coming in, hopefully more businesses coming in, there's a great need for capacity. We're going to want to improve fire flow. That means larger lines, better pipe access which you don't see right now in large numbers. And all that comes at a cost, not just in dollars, but in property, developing the land.
Right.
And those are items that the engineers are aware of that we need that area.
Okay.
So I think the answer to your actual question is kind of yes, kind of no, but it is being worked on.
Okay. So hopefully that's an actual yes that we can use?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
And that can be.
I trust her. Not so much you. So what do you guys think about anything else besides cover?
So the utility plan, just so we're clear, that's including both capacity, size, but also age of pipe and the longevity of how long it'll last, stuff like that. I know they're doing smoking of the sewer, smoke testing of the sewer. That's included in all this, or no? Because I mean, like with Klepper, there's leaking of pipe, apparently, I guess, underneath, not Klepper, McCown Street. But that's due to age of pipe. Have we done a full study analysis of all the age of the pipes underneath the downtown? Or are we going to? That's my question.
If I may. So as far as sanitary sewer lines, back in September, council authorized a sanitary sewer cleaning television project. So
Okay.
It's currently in design, will be bidding in January.
Okay.
So phase one of that is looking at the whole downtown area. So it's looking at, so from that, what we'll gain is what material is it, what condition is it currently in, what size is the line, does it need any kind of rehab? For sanitary sewer, there's a lot of trenchless rehabilitation we can do where you don't even have to dig a hole. Maybe a pothole here and there for a point repair, but you're not trying to completely dig up and replace the line if you don't have to. As far as water line goes, in the downtown area, a lot of it is truly unknown. of what year it was installed. The city has limited records from back when the water lines were installed. We do know what size they are generally from our records, and the way that we evaluate, do water lines need to be repaired, replaced, things like that. We look at where is the city commonly having leaks, and I know that there are minor leaks that we mentioned, but leaks that Public Works going out and repairing, is there a line that they've put 3 or 4 clamps on, and now is it worth, just going in and replacing the line instead of continuing to put Band-Aid patches on? So we look at things like that whenever we're deciding what lines to upsize. We're looking at growth in the city. We keep active projections of where is growth going to be, where is there going to be increased demand, what's the most efficient route to get water from the plants to the developments, things like that. So that's something that we are actively looking at now. We're revamping the capital improvement plan for the city as part of the impact fee study renewal, and we just keep a running tab of projections in the city, developments that we're hearing, waves of movement here and there. So we're definitely on top of growth, and want to make sure that there's adequate water and sewer.
So if we implement the McCown Street project, for instance, we can tap into y'all's sewer study that you're doing now and your other knowledge as far as the water line health, I guess, and y'all could make recommendations to any improvements that y'all anticipate as far as that. And then, of course, in the design of the improvement, they'll evaluate it then too, I assume, to some extent. So, okay.
There's a lot of forward-looking work in it.
Yeah, sounds like.
So for us to advise or to go the direction of McCown Reconstruction Streetscape, we would be implementing matching block programs. We would be doing everything we could with the businesses to improve and help with the cost of those ramps and help with the cost of facade changes and modifications, right? I don't want to assume it. I want to say we're putting in the implementation recommendations with the Gundry Corporation to cut that $1 million down significantly, right? I mean, because obviously to me, geometrically, it's a center of town. It services 2 sides of businesses. It's where the foot traffic is the most overall in any given festival. It makes sense to start there.
Yeah, and in the course of this plan, where you see, the items that you've seen as they've been labeled here, this is, it's one large plan, cohesively a plan, but it's going to be attacked in pieces. As those things are lined up, not everything is going to get done at once. Things would be done over time. They'll also be done, by parcel, so to speak. We talked about, road and sidewalk improvements along Leper, to some degree, McCown, these will be done in chunks. But yes, I'm answering your question, after backtracking, it will be done with an eye towards, how to work with the businesses, how to minimize costs and maximize the benefit. And the benefit, is looked at, what benefits, the city overall. What's beneficial to the business, to the economic activity, to the tourist, or who's coming into town, to the residents who want to visit the businesses in town. There's a lot of different interests at play. From our perspective here, it's how to make it good for all of those parts and work together.
Right. Well, let me encourage.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, and let me encourage, I think I made this private comment to Dave or maybe somebody else there at the time, but let's be realistic about the size of our automobiles, folks. So when our automobiles are not Toyotas, we drive Cowboy Cadillacs and SUVs. So as case in point, when you try to turn out the community center parking lot and hang a ride as I did last week, and you've got 250s and 350s, they're hanging 3 feet out in the road, y'all. So I'm thinking, when you get to the Jacobs project, you might have to borrow 3 feet off that curb to let the realistic vehicles that were actually parking there or angle park or something, because there is a big conflict. And if the grand plan is to get a lot of your parking back in there, whether you go option 1 or 2 or whatnot, over the big plan, let's do it reasonably and with the kind of automobiles we actually bring. So we're going to have to widen that area somehow And it's only 2 to 3 feet, but it's a huge 2 to 3 feet.
Well, there gets to be a difference between, whose standard do you use and what your roadway width is.
Yeah.
Because you have to accommodate, it's not just vehicular traffic each way that you're accommodating the other things that might take place on that road and roadside. At the same time, you have traffic going.
Right.
And so the comment is a good one in terms of, you're right, not everyone is driving an economy car.
Right. That's for my engineers and my people that know how to measure stuff and do stuff.
You have to have room for the economy car,
Yeah.
sure. You have to have room for a couple F-250 size vehicles as well.
Okay.
I feel like if we go forward with I guess the question would be, what would be the first step with the McCown Street reconstruction with streetscape? Because you obviously can't just start tearing stuff up and putting paint on, on lines and that kind of thing. So, what would be the first step? And then the second is, if we decide to do something with the Jacobs Lot improvement, I feel like that has to happen. Even if we don't want to do that first or second, that we have to be prepared to do that with this, because the Jacobs Lot is at a different elevation than all of this stuff, so we have to be moving at least in the direction of the future with the Jacobs Lot at some point with this streetscape.
There's certainly a number of staff consultant conversations that need to take place, I think, before being able to, I guess, give you more than a basic answer to that question. Looking over across to, for consultants, what kind of timeline do you think is realistic for us to be able to come back and with the actions we would need and some timeline direction for this group? Knowing that, part of talking about Plepper was the city is still waiting on an answer on a grant that we don't control the timeline of, but I think it's highly likely we'll have that information in that week or so.
So would you all feel comfortable if we left number 2 as a tabled item with the understanding that staff and our consultants know from our discussion precisely what we're thinking, and if they don't, a verbal lambasting will follow at our next meeting?
See,
Which is, that next meeting is 2 weeks from today.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you?
yes, I'd be fine with that. I make a motion, we table pending the next METC meeting, number 2, item 2.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded that we table item number 2 for return of information at our next MEDC meeting in 2 weeks. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion? Ryan and Carol, are you okay with this action?
Yes,
You're
ma'am.
very quiet.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I'm writing.
All those in favor of tabling item 2 till our next meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will table item 2 till our next meeting. We don't have anything on the agenda for executive session. Anything for board inquiry that you want to see at our next meeting? I think we had an update from Byron on the agenda, hopefully, that we discussed at our last meeting, Cody, on board inquiry.
Still waiting to get with Jeff on that. We did see the 2 items there in the implementation that speak directly to job and vocational things,
Well,
so.
we can talk about that at our next meeting. It's just reminding Richard that.
We should go ahead and plan that.
Anyone else?
As a note, though, starting with McGowan down there, I think that if it's a success, I think we're going to get a lot more cooperation and participation from other businesses as they see this, and they're going to want to
Right.
be part of it.
Right.
And like you said,
That
we
needs
do
to be
own
on
most
the
of
line.
that right away, so it's not having to get permission
Right.
so much.
Right, that's true. Although I would also note that Wayne, the new owner of the steakhouse, might be making some updates to his parking area and exterior that we might talk to him before he spends money to make sure that, he's aware of this, to, any coordination that we can do before he starts with his shovel.
Yeah.
That would be smart. All right?
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Should
I'll
anyone like to
entertain a
make
motion to adjourn.
A second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say